Hello YouTube, and welcome to a very special collaboration between me and the Elder Scrolls YouTuber Xith. Today we're going to talk about the Nordic conquests in the Meretic and First Era, and I will let him take it from here. King Vrag the Gifted began the expansion that led to the First Empire of the Nords. Within a span of 50 years, Skyrim ruled all of northern Tamriel, including most of present-day High Rock, a deep stretch of the Nibelheim Valley, and the whole of mainland Morrowind.
Nordic culture has been ground zero for most of the peculiar events that surround the first era of Tamrielic history. It has subsequently empowered and legitimized the race of Atmorans and Nords, shaping them into a much more formidable force than the reputation they initially harbored amongst the remaining cultures of Tamriel. Most, if not even all of Skyrim's neighboring provinces, were greatly in the dark about just how brutally efficient Ysgramor's dynasty was, and even if kingdoms knew about their barbarous behavior, they couldn't have predicted the bold nature of a particular military campaign, the Skyrim Conquests. With that being said, what was Ysgramor's dynasty, and what exactly did they achieve during these supposed conquests that I spoke of earlier? Well, Ysgramor's dynasty was formed shortly after Ysgramor and his surviving sons fled from the incinerated city of Sarthal after its sacking. Their supposed lust for revenge led them back to the shores of Eastmarch, wreaking a foul and unstoppable sense of vengeance upon the indigenous Falmer kingdom that inhabited Skyrim's frigid corners. This, alongside many others, was one of their most successful conquests. Their offensive against the Falmer was rarely ever halted. It's as if Atmoran squadrons hardly ever resisted marching into battle, and this is exactly how Atmorans fought their wars. But alas, the age of the Atmorans was bound to pass off into obscurity eventually, and so would Ysgramor's dynasty. But before Ysgramor's bloodline was fully thinned, his successors had bolstered plans to erect an empire capable of seizing entire provinces, and this plan would start with the formation of the first human empire on Tamriel, or what Nordic kings would like it to be known as, the First Empire of the Nords. I won't go into full detail about the structural and political foundation of this empire, but it mirrors that of the upcoming empires that drew inspiration from its Nordic counterparts. The creation of this empire is dated back to the fruitful period of High King Vrag's reign, which was in the year 240 of the First Era. The beginning of High King Vrag's reign was met with a societal dilemma that reached even Windhelm after its discovery, a dilemma which would prove useful in the justification of Vrag's future conquests. A group of stray Nordic hunters encountered a settlement of Proto-Breton Man Murray near the borders of the Reach, and these were indeed Bretons, a bred mix of Aldmer and Nedic blood. Immediately upon this discovery, fighting broke out due to the sentiment that this newly found race was just a butchered strand of Aldmer, but the defending Manmer forces would soon beg for mercy in a broken Nordic dialect, leading the Nordic hunters to a confusing thought. A thought which eventually found its way back to High King Vrag the Gifted. Vrag would come to his own subjective conclusion that these were long-lost remnants of Sarthal who, through decades of breeding with the Dareni hegemony Altmer, formed a prototype race harboring traits of both men and mer. Now, the validity of this claim is plausible, but these Manmer were most likely the product of needs intertwining their genetics with the Altmer of High Rock, not the other way around. Regardless, High King Vrag sought to rid his separated kinsmen from the tyrannical and feudalistic grasp of the neighboring Altmer. Since most of the viewers have already caught on to what Vrag wanted to achieve with this ludicrous theory, I'll gladly point out how naive and prone former Atmorans were. Their hostile affinity towards all things elven would be their rise and simultaneous downfall. Although bigoted and bold, the Nordic Empire dared not to completely anger their Nedic allies from the Elysian Slave Rebellion, which resulted in an indefinite truce of sorts. All of the aforementioned advances are what reflected High King Vrag's political finesse, because he made sure to effectively unite both events hand in hand. the Nordic Empire he created was formed for the sole reason of acting as a backbone for the colossal conquests he was hopeful of launching. Unfortunately for the first Nordic Empire of Skyrim, High King Vrag and his successors were struck with a multitude of internal strifes, and Imperial knowledge will delve further into the political complexity that befell their mighty empire during and after the Skyrim conquests.
After Vrag's conquest of High Rock, the Nordic Empire started to officially recognize small towns across the province where the soldiers and mercenaries had made their home as official parts of the Nordic Empire. This is where the origin of many cities in High Rock lie. For example, the great city-state of Daggerfall started out as one of these small military communities and is now one of the most influential and powerful cities of Tamriel hundreds of years later. When the Empire had stabilized a bit, the land-owning lords in the east of Skyrim also wanted to expand their territory, which resulted in the forces of the Empire mounting a large-scale invasion of Morrowind. Many young Nords that had heard of the glory attained in the wars in High Rock came to fight for glory and the hopes of colonizing the new land just like the soldiers in High Rock had done. The armies of the Nords invaded eastern Morrowind and slowly pushed past the local forces until they had control of most of mainland Morrowind, standing at the border with Blackmarsh. This conquest didn't go as smoothly as the conquest of High Rock, as the Chimer and Dwemer armies that they faced fought fiercely against them. However, internal strife among the Chimer clans and both the Dwemer and the Chimer's unwillingness to cooperate with each other against a mutual enemy resulted in the Nords being able to push over their disunited forces. Some Chimer tribes even fought alongside the Nords in hopes of destroying their rival tribes, and thus the Nords only faced bitter but very uncoordinated resistance. The only place that the Nords could never quite conquer was Vardenfell, which was controlled by a united Dwemer force which managed to repel the Nordic attacks. After the successful conquest of mainland Morrowind, another invasion was being prepared, this time to expand the holds of the south. However, to the south were only the Yarrel Mountains and snowy regions. A very unattractive piece of land, which the Jarls of the south decided wasn't really worth fighting for. However, when to the south Queen Alessia heard of the Nordic Empire's wish for expansion, she requested aid in their struggle against the Aelids. In return, the Nordic Empire would gain large portions of land in the Nibene region, once the Aelid Empire was defeated by their combined forces. This resulted in the High King sending large amounts of troops to fight side by side with the Alessian slave rebellion, and help them establish the Alessian Empire and tighten their alliance with the Alessians overall. When King Vrag died after many successful conquests, he was succeeded by High King Galir. Galir wanted to continue the legacy and conquer more territory, however there wasn't really much left to conquer. So he turned his eyes to the underground Dwemer city-states in Skyrim, which never had quite bowed to the rule of the Nords. These city-states were at this point very much weakened due to the bloody Ethereum Wars, a large-scale civil war among the Dwemer which had raged prior underground. Galir used this moment of weakness in the Dwemer to crush the city-states and incorporate them into the Empire as well. Other than this, Galir didn't really do anything other than just stabilize the Empire and tighten the Nordic grip on the provinces. After a relatively peaceful reign, he eventually died and at some point was succeeded by High King Borgas. Borgas faced a lot of trouble in High Rock, as the Durrani hegemony had been trying to retake High Rock. Unfortunately for Borgas, his troops were being driven out of most of High Rock by an increasingly strong Durrani hegemony, and even with the help of the Alessian Empire, who sent troops, he wasn't able to hold control over the provinces, even with their combined forces. After this, Borgas tried to strengthen the alliance with the Alessian Empire to basically avert another province loss like High Rock, and he tried to do so by adapting the Alessian pantheon of the 8 divines and outlawing all other divine pantheons, including the Nordic pantheon which was native in his empire. He also wanted to attack Valenwood together with the Alessian Empire after Valenwood backed out of a trade agreement with the Alessians. However, this turned out to be a very bad idea, as when he was in Cyrodiil for negotiations with the Alessians, he was assassinated by Bosmer during the Wild Hunt, which was activated in order to kill him so the war could be prevented. Unfortunately, Borgas did not have any heirs, and the mood of Jarls basically failed to appoint a new king. And this caused for the first Skyrim Civil War, the War of Succession, a period of long infighting between the Jarls that was fought for several years without mercy, even raiding other cities within Skyrim like Windhelm, the heart of the Empire, which was raided at some point during this war. This period of instability was used by the conquered people to free themselves. The Reach quickly fell to the Durrani hegemony, Morrowind was lost when the Chimer War Chief Indoril Nerevar and Dwemer King Dumak united to drive out the Nordic forces out of their land, and the Nibene region declared independence as a merchant state. Meanwhile, Skyrim's civil war continued, and there was no way for them to hold on to the provinces since they couldn't even hold on to their own land. And there wasn't really much left of Skyrim's former glory after this War of Succession. Years later, Skyrim would get reunited under High King Olaf, One-Eye, who had conquered all of Skyrim and crowned himself High King. He used this position to then conquer back the Reach, but further than the Reach he would never really come with his conquest, as the days of the great Nordic Empire were numbered. And that's the story of the Skyrim conquests and the Nordic Empire. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, consider watching some of my other lore videos or consider visiting Xith's channel, who makes awesome lore videos as well. That said, I wish to thank Mr. Xith for being willing to collaborate with me. Collaborations are always fun to do, especially when it's someone who's very awesome and that you actually watch yourself. So, thank you Xith for this opportunity, and thank you for helping me edit this video.
With that being said, I'm grateful for the opportunity that I've been given to appear on this channel, and I hope you all enjoy the cinematic footage of the various battles that appeared throughout the video. They took me quite long to film, but I still enjoyed filming them nonetheless.
That said, we will hopefully see you in another one of our videos, and until then, bye bye.